Overnight, global conflict remains the dominant driver of risk and policy. In Ukraine, Russian strikes have killed at least 22 people, with rescuers pulling bodies from rubble, including from an apartment block. In the Middle East, Israel has continued strikes in southern Lebanon, though a partial truce with Hezbollah appears to be holding, with no reported return to strikes on Beirut since a U.S. announced deal. In Gaza, 7 months after a ceasefire, reporting highlights reconstruction is barely underway. Water remains contaminated and only minimal aid is getting through, underscoring the scale of the humanitarian and infrastructure challenge. Diplomacy and security settings are also shifting. Iran's supreme leader is appearing more active as talks continue, with U.S. officials saying Tehran has agreed to discuss previously off-limits aspects of its nuclear file. In Washington, the Financial Times reports President Trump has appointed real estate heir Bill Pulte as national intelligence chief in an acting capacity, while ABC reports Trump is rethinking a $2.51 billion fund for political allies amid corruption allegations, according to sources. In North America, Canada has formally requested renewal of the USCA Trade Pact, signaling a push to lock in regional trade rules amid broader global uncertainty. On the global economy and markets, the Financial Times reports Goldman Sachs chief David Solomon sees more greed than fear on Wall Street, reflecting a bullish tone after a strong run in U.S. equities. Separately, shipping risk remains in focus. The Financial Times reports a shipping tycoon saying he would prefer paying $200,000 fee to cross the Strait of Hormuz rather than face the disruption and uncertainty of a closure. A reminder that energy and freight choke points remain alive: inflation and supply chain risk. In artificial intelligence and the technological revolution, the most visible near-term change continues to be in consumer-facing industries. The Guardian highlights how AI-generated models and content are reshaping online shopping and fashion marketing, accelerating the shift towards synthetic media and raising fresh questions about authenticity, disclosure and jobs in creative supply chains. Turning to Australia, population and cost of living pressures remain central. SBS reports Australia's population has hit 28 million, with some areas growing fastest and the country potentially reaching 30 million within the next few years. That growth feeds directly into housing demand. Ahead of the federal budget, ABC reports economists are tipping an extended period where home prices grow no faster than inflation, after a market already choking on its own excesses. But the key question remains whether policy settings can ease the sense that Australians have become housing hostages. On wages, SBS reports the wage umpire has expressed regret over the minimum pay rise, as unions welcome the decision and employers push back. The conversation notes almost 3 million workers will receive a 4.75% pay rise in July, but argues wages still have not caught up with inflation over the past 5 years, keeping real purchasing power under strain. In Australian government policy and the public service, scrutiny is building around major programs and defence. The Sydney Morning Herald reports the Human Rights Commission has serious concerns about elements of Labor's NDIS laws aimed at cutting $37 billion from future spending, setting up a debate about safeguards, access and sustainability. SBS reports the government has waived gag orders for defence sexual violence survivors ahead of an inquiry due to begin later in 2026, a significant administrative and cultural shift for defence and the broader public sector. On national security and industry capability, ABC reports an Australia-made rocket motor has been test-fired for the first time, a step toward expanding domestic missile industry capacity. Meanwhile, the conversation reports internal political pressure on AUKUS continues, with Ed Husic stirring debate and Peter Garrett to lead a public inquiry, keeping defence procurement and strategic alignment in the political spotlight. In foreign policy, SBS reports Australia has sanctioned Israeli extremists in response to violence in Palestine, following earlier sanctions on Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, signaling a firmer stance and likely diplomatic sensitivity. Finally, in local and community updates, ABC reports 3 Australian men have been found guilty in Morocco after taking a black flight into Indonesia's South Papua from far north Queensland without visas, highlighting border enforcement and regional legal cooperation.